So let's talk about these NBP Style Brushes. Okay, we have a first set of our style brushes, which we're very excited about. They do all kinds of different things, and it's just a great, fast way to do them. And I want to answer that real quick up front because some people have asked about style brushes. They're like, what's the point? You can set up a layer and we'll do whatever you want to do and then choose a brush. Yeah, but a style brush is about efficiency. And I try to create style brushes that I do, or rather I use the function regularly because I think they're very, very useful, right? Okay, so let's go over them real quick, okay? We have the first one here, the first two, NBP Big Blue 1 and 2. They're different intensities. So what it is a blue enhancer. So when you pick it, all right, you immediately get a brush and you can change the size of it. So here's an example. You can quickly just come in, choose Big Blue, and then paint blue sky. And you get blue. And only the areas that are blue are you going to get a blue enhancement. So I paint the sign, doesn't enhance it. So I've done everything there, but I don't have to. I can just take usually a sky or a pool or a beach or something like that. And I can quickly make it blue just by painting it in. And then of course change the opacity now that I have that layer. Instantly. Blue is very common because when I'm shooting, I have a lot of blue skies. I do have pools and I have water and things like that. It's a great way to boost blue in a manual way. Brush it in wherever you want. Keep in mind too, when you're using it, your brush can also be changed to whatever flow. It can be less or more. You're like, I want a little bit of blue pop up here, just a little bit. And I'm going to kind of brush it in until I think it looks good. And there you go. It's not just boost the blue everywhere. Very powerful when you really want to dial in something just right, okay? Now, NBP compressor curves. Now, compressors are something that I do in NBP tools all the time. It's very powerful. And a compressor using curves will take the output levels of the highlights and the shadows and bring them down, bring the highlights down and the shadows up. Similar to, let's go to maybe this shot here. So that's a little bit more work done on it already. There you go. Similar version of the shot. Check this out. So if I use a compressor, and I'm going to make it pretty strong for the video, okay? So this is a compressor curve. So I can paint with it. There we go. All right, let's turn that off and on. Very subtle. But what it does is it kind of reduces contrast, right? So if you turn it up a lot and you just come up here and be like, oh, let's go paint all of this. It reduces contrast. Very, very useful when you want to do that. Let's go back to this image. We still have the brush running. That's another big thing too. I can go to another image with the brush still open and then start painting. So I want to reduce the contrast of all these trees and the sign. Quickly paint all of that. Okay. And now I've done that. I've reduced the contrast because I'm compressing output levels with curves. Now reset that. Actually, let's go to another image. Let's go to this one. We're going to make a new variant of it just to make it fresh. There we go. We have compressor levels. Does the same thing but uses levels. It's just a different type of method or technique to do the compression, and you need to experiment back and forth to see which one works best for you. So let's say you zoom in a little bit here and you take a little bit more care to reduce contrast on her. Okay, just a little bit less contrast on her. So when you add some grading, it won't be quite as intense perhaps. There you go. See, immediately reduce contrast on her using levels compression, which again, it's a balancer kind of look. I usually use this kind of thing for my overall mastering, but it's great for independent things, individual things. Now, the compressor recovery high, same story, okay, but this one is extremely strong and it depends on what you're trying to do with it. Okay, I'm going to use a brush really, really strong. But as you start painting with it, you'll see everything flattens really quick, really quick. Okay, this is an extreme example. Now I flattened, the image overly so, lost a ton of contrast. But again, think about it. Let's say you want some details to come out of these trees. Quickly paint some details into the trees and into the sign. Okay, you're losing a little bit of detail down here. Now I'm about as soft as I'm going to get. I'm going to expand that really big. And I'm going to change the flow down. And now I'm going to bring some detail back in this area. Not just brightening, but toning down the highlights on her as well. Okay. That's all. If that all becomes a little bit too strong when you're working, boom, you just turn it down. Look how much detail I'm bringing back just by doing that extreme recovery. Again, it's better than the automatic recovery over everything. We have a high one, a low one, and a medium one. So at a glance, you can just get used to which one you like, tap it and go. Now, let's see if we can find something ever so slightly a little bit more close up again. Okay. Now, the deep skin ones are interesting because they do run the skin tools. Okay. They're not going to be as useful on an image like this because there's so many colors and so many tones, okay? But when you paint over the skin tone carefully, you're using the skin balancer tools and the skin darkening tools to quickly bring in some balance. Obviously, I would get way, way too strong. But if I take the time to do it right, and or take the opacity down, you can make a lot of interesting changes. It's not the best example. It's really going to be for more of a closer shot or like a swimwear shot or a fashion shot or something like that. It's a little bit more focused on them. This is an environmental shot, but again, it uses the skin balancing tools and the skin deepening tools that, you know, Capture One has, but in a brush. Okay. Now, speaking of, let me pause for a second. I'll be back in a flash for you guys, but I'm going to go to a different set of images and we're going to look at what the rest of them do. 1 second. All right, so let's try NBP Eyes Boost. Okay, we're going to tap that. We're going to do a very small brush. We're going to paint in the eyes, just kind of in the whites and the, you know, iris and the pupil and everything else, and even a little bit around it is what it's designed for. It is a contrast booster. It's not just a brightener. It's designed to let you paint it in either slowly with a flow, which I didn't do. I kind of dumped it in, or change the opacity later. It's a way to add contrast and pop to the eyes. You can experiment using it just on the iris or on the sclera, the white part as well. And it just has all my contrasting methods that I love doing when I pop eyes. So it's very, very useful in that regard. Now, Eyes Recover is going to be similar, and I use it regularly with it. And that's going to literally just kind of bring up the overall softness and reduce contrast in the dark areas of eyes. That's in case they're lost in a dark pocket. Now, a lot of these aren't. These are pretty well lit because the light's right behind me when I was shooting it. So there's not a whole lot of darkness missing here, a lot of brightness missing, but it's still a great way to wake up an eye when you want to bring the shadows up as well, apart from just brightening in general. See how soft that is? It's a little too soft. Take down the opacity down to even 30%, and I've softened that eye, brought back some of that detail, which I think is pretty cool. Very, very cool tool there. Okay. Now, Green's Boost is going to be very, very similar to Big Blue. And what's interesting about Green Boost is that I don't have a sample right here in front of me, but the way it works is that it boosts the green in a way that also includes a little bit of yellow. Great for foliage and outdoor shots. Same sort of story. Okay. Let me turn some of these off or delete that. Let's turn this one. There we go. Okay, now Highlight Recover is just like the other fixes, if you will. Okay, but I need a lot bigger of a brush. So let's go real big. And what it does is wherever you paint, it's going to recover highlights, you know, depending on how strong you put it. But it's a way to paint in recovery of highlights instead of having to use the automatic full blown ones. I don't think I have any windows on these shots. Let me see. I may or may not. I don't know. Well, here's some windows now. Okay, so let's look at this one. Okay, so now we can come in with a Highlight Recover. It's all maximum right now. So if I were to paint a window, as you can see, it's kicking in. We reduce that. There it goes. Lagged a little bit, but there it goes. See, I'm painting in Highlight Recover only on the window. And because it's only doing Highlight Recovery, I'm not going to mess with any mids, too many mids, and shadows, right? So now I went from that to that just by painting it in, and any highlights on her don't get reduced by the automatic global changes, right? So very, very useful there. Incandescent Fix is very similar. We have that on our styles as well on the Advanced Raw. It's great for when there's a light bulb that needs to be, you know, it's a little bit too warm because of the, you know, the white balance problems. And I don't think I have a sample here, but I do have it on the other video, so you guys can check that out. Or maybe I do. Let me see. Let's see. Here's one. Okay, so let's go to Incandescent Fix, which is on. And we usually have to do this one pretty low flow. We're going to paint in the back here. It's a little too strong on the blue, so we're going to undo that just a little bit. Undo. There we go. And it's not just painting blue. It's changing the actual white balance. So when you paint here, you're changing the white balance. It's great for situations like this. Sunshine or strobe on your main subject. And as it falls back into the background, there might be a incandescent light bulb that's very blue because it's a completely different white balance. So you can dial that in, paint it in real smooth to where you think it might fit best. And then, of course, you can change the opacity. So it went from very orange to toned down. Great when you're trying to do color grading after that, just into a brush form. Same thing as before. Shadow Recover works the same way. It's Highlight Recover, same story. You can just kind of paint into a shadow area here, and it's going to do shadow recovery only in specific spots. Okay, and don't forget, you can always use your eraser tool as well and kind of clean things up if you feel you need to. And then on that layer, change the opacity. And now we've done some direct shadow recovery, exactly where we want it. Very quick and simple. Skin Balancer, same story as using the skin tool, where you end up with, the idea of changing balancing the hues, right? I'm gonna put this really strong so we can see. Okay, So now I also have the automatic mask built in or on for this brush. So it's going to calculate an auto mask. It's usually a good way to try to start with it. You can even try the magic brush, etc. if you want to try to get just a skin tone specifically. But it's also a good idea to just paint carefully. It's very powerful when you just paint carefully and really balance the skin tone in a detailed way rather than doing it, you know, full-blown automatic. Okay, so let's see what we've done there. It went from red arm and red legs. Now everything is a little more balanced. We can change those settings if we want. Great way to paint in balance, like red fingers, red noses and ears, and things of that nature. Okay. Now, NBP Unhaze. This is one that's very interesting. I don't usually do it with the auto mask, but when you paint with this one, it literally uses a dehaze filter, but the other direction, or excuse me, in the direction that that you might get to add contrast. And the reason why I chose the dehaze filter on this Unhaze, let me see if I can find something a little softer. Okay. The reason why I chose it is because it adds contrast in a way that's not like other tools in Capture One or even Lightroom. The haze filter, the dehaze filter has a certain quality to it. And I really like the way it brings back detail and tonal contrast. So I made it into a brush. You can quickly brush in those details, right? So I hope that helps. That's a good overview of the style brushes that we've released from NBP the first time for Capture One. And we're going to have many more in the works that we're testing, and we're getting feedback from users to see what they want. But again, these brushes aren't necessarily all about a revolutionary function, but about taking common functions and making them work super efficiently for you.